Today, I'll take you through two of the most terrifying cave diving disasters. Watch carefully and stay safe. The Tilly Foster Iron Mine, located in New York, in a small town southeast of there, rests the old Tilly Foster Iron Mine. It was an ore mine, and no one knew the region had ore in its roots until 1810, when ore was discovered. Within 40 years, it had already gathered a variety of immigrants from countries such as Austria, Italy, and even Ireland, all moving there to find work, mainly as miners. After a while, the mine was excavated as work began, with horizontal tunnels reaching about 300 feet from the Earth's surface. At its deepest, the mine stretched about 600 feet in length. Between 1887 and 1889, the mine was revitalized, and mining began from the top down, creating a very large open pit mine. This made the mine grow in reputation, becoming incredibly famous and attracting attention worldwide. But little did they know, this would be the most costly decision that would signal the end of the mine's growing popularity. Disaster struck on November 29, 1895, while about 35 miners were working in the mine. They suddenly heard a very loud noise above them, and an avalanche of rock, dirt, and debris raced toward them at immense speed. Some of the men stood frozen in fear as the avalanche collapsed on them. Only a handful survived, while 13 men were crushed to death by the falling rocks. The owners couldn't cover the financial responsibilities to keep the mine running, so it was abandoned. Shortly after, the mine was enveloped by a nearby reservoir, marking the start of the cave's diving travails. However, before then, between 1897 and 1941, when the mine was restricted, it became a perfect spot for dumping cars, anything, and anyone. Mobs often used the site to get rid of dead bodies or evidence they didn't want the public to see. During World War II, the Navy began using the area to test diving equipment. Later on, recreational divers started exploring the site, though not without permission. The owners made them sign a petition stating they wouldn't be held liable for anything that happened to them while diving. These divers agreed and managed to map out the caves. After 4 years of mapping, divers Bob and Dan arrived at the Tilly Foster Mine on November 19, 2017. It was supposed to be a quick in-and-out dive, as Thomas was planning to meet his girlfriend soon for a party at her place. While Thomas's intentions were clear and pure, he was exploring the mine to recover the body of a girl named Robin Frances Murphy, who had been missing since April 1995. The main goal of the dive was to recover her body, as even the police hadn't given up searching for her. People were still voluntarily donating to organizations to help find her, and Thomas and his group were determined to locate her body. They had some leads on where she might be. The chances of anything tragic happening to him seemed very low because by 2016, Thomas had already made at least 89 dives into the cave, so he was no stranger to the terrain. On the day of the dive, everything started as expected. He began the dive at noon. The surface of the water was 70 degrees, but as he went further down, the temperature dropped to about 40 degrees. However, he was well prepared for these conditions, with the right suit and necessary equipment. After a little while, he noticed he was running out of air quickly, and he realized his tank was already half full. He tried to surface, but unfortunately, he was in a zone where the visibility was very low, and he couldn't see anything. He began to panic, and his oxygen intake increased, worsening the situation. The more he panicked, the more he sealed his fate, rather than helping himself. After hours had passed and Thomas still hadn't surfaced, it became evident that he was dead. By this point, more than 90 minutes had passed, and the 90 minutes worth of air he had would have been exhausted. The police launched a rescue mission, and his body was found 25 hours after he made the dive. An important detail noted was that he had gotten entangled in wires, which likely caused him to struggle repeatedly, leading to increased stress and faster panic, which made him lose air more quickly. After an investigation into Thomas's death, it was concluded that his passing was a tragic accident caused by miscalculations and a bit of indecisiveness. The Sac Actun cave disaster. This cave is often regarded as one of the most complex and extensive cave systems in the world. Even though it has been charted, it remains extremely tough and challenging to navigate. Along the beautiful coastline of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula lies this wonder. With over 228 miles of chambers and passages mapped so far, it is the longest underwater cave system and the second longest overall, only behind Kentucky's Mammoth Cave, which we will discuss in upcoming videos. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out. Now back to business. The cave area is filled with numerous sinkholes, each leading to the Sac Actun cave system, contributing to its immense size and length. It is also very old, with some rocks estimated to be about 250 years old, and fossils of prehistoric animals have been discovered in its depths. Exploration of this cave didn't start well, as information about it remained unknown until recently, when significant findings began to emerge. On the 9th of December 2004, tragedy struck as 9 experienced divers set out to explore the vast Sac Actun cave system, also known as the White Cave. This cave was a beauty and a true joy to explore. Any diver would be thrilled to discover and uncover its hidden mysteries, just as others had done before. However, after the 9 divers split into 2 separate groups, one group made a wrong turn that transformed their recreational dive into a life-or-death struggle for survival. They intended to use cenote Kalimba as their entry point into the cave, so they parked their vehicle nearby. This entry point had a gentle current, making it suitable for divers who weren't too experienced, and it seemed like the perfect choice for them. However, this cave had its own dangers, with very small openings and rocks jutting out in every direction. It was a cave to be cautious of, as the corners and entrances looked so similar that it was easy to get lost. There was also the risk of disturbing the rocks, which could release sediments and cause blindness by reducing visibility. But these divers were experienced and knew what they were doing, having completed several dives together before. While they used specific guidelines to mark their path back to the surface, the divers split into 2 teams. Team A explored the cenote box Chen, while Team B had other plans, as they were already familiar with the terrain and had no fear of any difficulty coming their way. Around 4:02 a.m., the 2 teams entered with all their gear and separated as planned. Team A didn't venture far, avoiding any serious issues, but Team B wanted to reach greater depths. As the dive commenced, Team B began placing guidelines at specific points in the cave to mark their path back. Everything was going smoothly until it wasn't. The team became captivated by the immense beauty of the cave and its terrain. There were 2 lines. One was a temporary gap line, and the other was the main guideline that would lead them to Box Chen and the other divers. However, they mistakenly followed the wrong guideline. It was like reaching a T-junction and turning right instead of left. By this time, it was already 5:04 a.m. Around 6:22 a.m., one member of the team became particularly entranced by the cave's beauty and spent over 25 minutes taking pictures. Still, the divers didn't realize they were on a path leading to disaster. Venturing as far as 1,400 feet from the main entrance, it became clear that tragedy was imminent. By 7:10 a.m., they realized they had been heading in the wrong direction and hastily began searching for the correct guideline to lead them back toward Kalimba. After finding the correct guideline, they felt a bit of relief. However, the ordeal wasn't over yet. They still had another 70 feet to swim before making their ascent. At this point, their air was almost depleted. Survival tactics kicked in, and they began sharing tanks, inhaling air in turns, and pushing forward. Sadly, it wasn't enough. 2 out of the 4 divers lost their lives, and their bodies were recovered about 250 feet from the cave entrance. The initiative to share air didn't work as they had hoped, and Team A was unaware of the unfolding tragedy. The investigation concluded that the critical error was in the placement and following of the guidelines set in the cave. Even the most experienced cave divers can lose their lives, as even the smallest mistake can be fatal. Experience alone doesn't guarantee survival in cave diving. Caution and sharpness are essential for every moment underwater.